Oye, Añelota. In this quick video, we're going to take a look at introducing the idea of conditional statements, also known as if statements. Granted, there are more than just if statements that are conditionals, but ifs are a really useful one. So let's say that I've got 10 trials here and I've got a number of minutes that I want to take a look at for my listing. And remember, I'm going to show you this with only 10 options, or 10 trials, but remember, you might have hundreds or thousands of them, and that's especially where this becomes useful. Let's say that I've got a minimum in my scenario where I only want to look at scenario outcomes that are greater than 25 minutes, or greater than or equal to, maybe. So we have a setup, a parameter that says, hey, we have to have at least 25 minutes for this to be worthwhile, so we don't count anything that's under 25 minutes. Well, I've got all of my total minutes here from my various trials, and I went ahead and made a spot over here that I'm saying is the minimum. Now, in preparation, I've gone ahead and coded it yellow because I want to treat that as an input. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say yes/no, question mark. Hit the wrong thing. Oop. Question mark. There we go. Yes, no. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to use an if statement, which is basically a way of setting up two possible outcomes, at least with one if statement. So here's what I'm going to do first. It's a function, and I'm going to start off by hitting the equal sign. Then I'm also going to type in if for the if function. And it says returns value depending on a logical expression. Okay, great. So I'm going to open parentheses, and the first thing it asks me for is what logical expression do I want to use? Well, in this case, I want to say yes if the number of minutes is greater than or equal to 25. So I'm going to start off by clicking the box that I want it to look at, which is my number of minutes, and then I'm going to say I want it to be either or greater than or equal to my reference box. So I'm going to go over here and select 25. Then I hit comma, and that separates out the multiple parts of this function. We're starting to look at a little bit more complex functions where there are multiple parts that need to be given to it. Okay, so now I've told it the condition, the thing I want it to check. And if the answer is yes, it'll do one thing, and if the answer is no, it'll do something different. So now it's asking, what should I do if it's true? In other words, if that statement, the logical expression that I put in, is a true statement. So if B2, for instance, is greater than E1, I want it to do the following. I want it to type in yes, but to get a function in a spreadsheet to return text, you have to put quotation marks around it. Okay, that's what I want it to do if it's yes. And then I'm going to do comma, and then it says, okay, what should I do if it's not true? I'm going to go with no. All right, now I'm going to close that up and finish it up. And I've got, oh wow, it's got yes, and because this is greater, 42 is greater than 25. Now I'm going to grab the bottom right here on the little circle, and I'm going to drag it down, but I already know that I've done something wrong. It doesn't like this. I think it may be trying to fix it for me. Let's see. I'll go ahead and click yes. Let's see what it does. I think it did automatically fix it for me, so let's see. It intuited that I need to keep E1 the same, and it added my dollar signs. I didn't realize it was going to do that. This is one of the few times where the computer is actually smart enough to do something sensible, so I don't normally rely on it. I didn't originally put in the dollar signs, but we talked about in one of our previous videos that putting in dollar signs keeps the address from moving. So now, no matter how far I move this down, it moves this down along with it, the B column, because it has no dollar signs in it, but because my E1 does have dollar signs, which the computer was good enough to add, it does actually stay checking E1. Okay, so with this, I've got a whole bunch of yeses and nos. We can see 42 is greater than or equal to 25, so yes. Same thing with 37, and say, now 22 is not greater than or equal, so it returns no. And we've got that where it's automatically updating that. Now, you could have just put in this, instead of E1, we could have just put in the value 25, but here's the reason that I brought this up and did the extra work from the beginning, because I wanted to show you the following. What if it turns out you wrote down the instructions wrong, and it was actually you just needed a minimum of 5 minutes? Well, now that this is an input, and I've coded it so, I know that I can go in and I can fix that, so I'm going to change this to 5 minutes. Oh, well, all of these are greater than or equal to 5, so they all become yeses. Now I'm going to switch this out. Maybe I misread it again and it's actually 15. Okay, when I change it to 15, I end up with two no's. There's a 5 and a 14. So here's where we can get some easy output on that. Now, yes and no are the sort of thing that looks good and can answer it very well for a human brain, but it may be more useful to maybe you get a score of 0 if the minimum is below 15. So what you could do instead of returning yes, you could return a value of 1. And instead of returning no, you could return a value of 0. And now you've got a numerical thing that you can do calculations on. So you could go through, and if you thought your score was going to be some value, you could multiply that score by whatever's in this column, and then anything that's below 15 minutes, or whatever the threshold is, returns a 0, so your score would automatically come back as a 0 because you've exceeded one of our limitations. That's fairly useful. One of the last things I'm going to show you on this is the following. Conditional formatting. It's basically ifs applied to some of the appearances that we had talked about in a previous one. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to highlight all of these, drag down or hold shift. I'm going to right click and I'm going to scroll down some to view more cell actions. And I'm going to go to conditional formatting. Okay, now there's a bunch of options that you can actually do on here. If cell is not empty, if the text starts with, if the date is. Here's a greater than or equal to. So I could say greater than or equal to 15, for instance. And now, if I do that, I could click done and click away from it. And we could see that it will automatically change the color to green if this value is greater than 15. But if I change this back to 25, well, these update, but my color system didn't. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to that, and I'm going to try and change that out so that it also changes. Instead of greater than or equal to, you'd have to put in a number and leave it that way. We can go instead to custom formula. And with a custom formula, we can say, okay, I want equals. Let's see. The cell that I'm wanting it to check, at least initially, is B2, is greater than or equal to $E$1. Now it's recognizing that, and that's great. I'm going to change it so that it's no longer green. Maybe I want to make this a nice shade of blue. And I could change the text to be, in fact, let's make this white text and dark blue to really draw attention. And then I'm going to click done. So now that I've got that, I've got it where now I can also get something that is easy to see with my eyes of things that are good or bad. And I can express it numerically to calculate up my score. And most importantly, because I set up an input with these conditional statements, the if statements, I could then change this out. If instead the threshold was actually 40, then I could put that in and we can see my numbers automatically update and my color system automatically updates to draw my eyes to the things that match that. All right. We've used this in quite a few places to help augment and make it easier to read a lot of intense analysis. So hopefully that's useful for you. Until next time.